Ready to go? Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about safety, and because safety is really paramount. And you know, interesting. Just we're more conscious of it now because of what's going on in the world with COVID. And you know, in the U.S., 660,000 deaths, more than in all of our war deaths in the 20th century combined, which is pretty scary. I wanted to just say, though, hats off to SCAD, because I feel like they really put your safety and our staff safety over profit, you know, and they've all along the way, and they've consulted with us constantly. They know we want to do a job. They want to know what we want to accomplish. How can we do it safely, you know? And I think it's really pretty good that they've done it. And hats off to you all for getting vaccinated. As I said before, it's really essential, especially for the diving locker. I don't even think they will let us in there without vaccination, and you know why? Because it's an enclosed area, it's a pool area, you know, it's humid, et cetera, so it's really, really, you know, critical that, and they may require it just to get in the door. So, but beyond that, that's pretty good. But beyond all of the new COVID challenges that we're dealing with, you know, to be honest, documentary environmental filmmaking is not the safest endeavor in the world. It's risky, it's very challenging. You're dealing with exotic diseases depending where you go. You're dealing with sometimes menacing wildlife, climbing injuries, bad weather, big one, vehicle accidents, jeeps, boats, helicopters. And just to talk about some of the stellar filmmakers, you know, Jacques Cousteau lost his son Philippe in a flying boat crash. Brady Barr, big guy, National Geographic, picked up parasites that ate through his brain. A hippo bit through Alan Root's calf as he was filming in Kenya. Another guy, Terry Matthews, was gored by a black rhino. Underwater cinematographers suffer embolisms, punctured eardrums, damaged lungs. My good friend Mike DeGree was bitten in the arm by a black-tipped shark. It was really interesting. He was filming in the Marshall Islands, and they were nowhere near a hospital, and it was like a big, huge thing. So they flew him to one of the Marianas Islands that had a hospital, and they said that they were going to have to lop his arm off, and they said the only one who could put it back together was in Hawaii. So they put him on a military transport plane and flew him all the way to Hawaii, and he's strapped down in a chair, and he's got all kinds of stuff stuck in his veins. And while he was traveling, the tube jiggled out of his thing because he was in a cargo hold, and the nurse who was watching him was asleep. And he's trying to kick her, and you know, yeah, I've heard the story 100 times. They saved his arm. The good part was, he was a fairly good-looking single guy, and he would go into bars, and he would have this scar, and you know, he would see a girl look at it, and he would go, "Shark bite." Good first pickup line, wouldn't you say? Yeah, that worked. Sad to say, I lost Mike in a helicopter accident when he was doing a film for James Cameron. It was off Australia. I don't mean to scare you all away. I just want to let you know about the reality of this kind of filmmaking. We always have to have safety as our number one thing. It's the first thing we think about, the first thing we worry about, you know. You don't worry about your shot, you don't worry about anything. You worry, is this a safe thing to do? And you know, there's a whole lot of reasons for it, but here are some basic safety tips I'm going to go through. The first thing was always get your shots. And I wasn't simply talking about the COVID shot, which is an obvious safety requirement, but you know, malaria is just prevalent pretty much everywhere in Africa, and it's you know, there are two types of malarium shots. There's larium and malarone, and larium is the one you can take just once a week, except from what I've been told, it's like LSD, you know, you start hallucinating after a while. There's some people who like it. And Malarone is a daily shot that you take. I prefer the daily, and not because of the scary thing. It's just that when you're out in the field, you never know what day of the week it is. You know, it's like your calendar is gone. You're just out there working, and to think, oh my God, it's Saturday, and I was supposed to take my Lariam yesterday, and I didn't do it. For me, if it's an everyday thing, I can always say, okay, cup of coffee, Malarone. Cup of coffee, Malarone. Easy, you know, and that way I take it all the time. At National Geographic, before you go anywhere, they have actually an on-staff doctor who will research where you're going, make a whole list of the potential diseases, make sure you get your shot, you know, for every single one of those, or you ain't going nowhere. They're not going to let you, you know. That said, you can get the shot just like you can get the COVID vaccine and still get COVID. But the thing is, you can get malaria even after getting a malaria shot, but you won't get, you know, the death-defying symptoms that you can get, you know, with malaria. And I can't even tell you how many people I know that I work with Nat Geo coming back from Africa who got it, you know. It's not good. Okay, this is common sense. Please don't drink the water, okay? Don't drink the water. And then when you're in some foreign locations, you think you're drinking bottled water, but it's not. It's tap water that they put in the plastic thing and they sell to you and da-da-da. Or you are up in the mountains, you know, you're in the Canadian Rockies filming this extraordinary thing, and here's this mountain stream coming by and you're so thirsty and it's crystal clear. It's wonderful. It isn't some elk just peed in that thing, you know, 200 feet upstream from you, you know. So, yeah, and there are many different types of diseases that can thrive in the cold, clear waters, you know. I mean, they're just there. So water, water, water. Everywhere you go, you got to think water. I usually bring it to class. There's this thing called the life straw. And have any of you guys seen that? Yeah, it works. And okay, I was telling you about how we travel a lot in this class. I hadn't been scuba diving for several years, and I wanted to go again. And so it was 2017, and I decided I wanted to dive in the reefs off Cuba because they were so pristine and clear. And in the Florida Keys, there's this stony coral disease that's sweeping through them now, and they're not as healthy as they used to be. But the reefs off this place called the Isle of Youth, 60 miles off the south coast of Cuba, 6th largest island in the Caribbean. No one has heard of it. How many of you have heard of the Isle of Youth? Nobody, right? 6th largest island in the Caribbean. So I did, and that's where the great reefs are. So I was going to go there, and my wife said, well, if you're going to go, I'm going to go because, you know, things are going to happen and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, that's fine. And then she told Amanda Kolkowski, and Amanda said, well, okay, if you're going, you know, do you mind if I go? I said, okay, sure, that's fine, you know. And then she told her friend Sheila Lynn, who runs the Savannah Film Festival, and Sheila says, hey, I hear you guys are going to Cuba. Do you mind if I go down to the, oh yeah, go along. And then Amanda spills the beans to my former environmental students, and we end up 12 of us going down, you know, to the amazingly unknown Isle of Youth. And the only reason I bring this up was I insisted that everybody bring a life straw with them. And it worked. It really worked. The only one who got sick down there was my wife. Why? Because she couldn't drink her mojito without ice in it. I said, Fran, no, you can't, ice, no, it doesn't kill anything. Yeah, that was her. Anyway, but anyway, so water, life straw, really, you know, pretty critical. If you're going to a new location, it always helps to have an experienced guide. because you can't learn all about it in travel books and online and all the research you do. You need the person who's there, who knows the bugs, who knows the this, who knows the that, you know. I mean, that's really the really important thing. If you can, you know, get a local guide. You know, if you're in one of those kind of remote areas, particularly in a country that's not your native country and you're not familiar with it, you know, you want to get that guide. Filming animals, and I'll go through this again, I'm going to have a whole lecture on wildlife filmmaking, but know that you know, 99.999% of the time, none of those animals want to hurt you, you know. And if we have time later on in today, or if not, I'll send you a copy of it, the film that I did in Africa on the lions of Africa. And there were some scary moments with the lions of Africa, but that wasn't what I should have been worried about. You always need to use insecticide. You always need to use spray when you're in these places. And I got a tick bite that laid me low for a week. I felt like every bone in my body was broken, you know, and this was after I came back from that shoot in the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. And so even here, even locally now, we now have some really dangerous mosquito-borne diseases that are working their way through Georgia. And so, yeah, when we go to Fort Pulaski, bring bug spray. Make sure that you spray yourself good, you know, because it's really, really important. The bugs are what do you in. You know, mosquitoes, ticks, and, as she knows, spider. My hand is not as swollen now as it's been for the last week, but I got bit by a spider on this knuckle, and my whole hand swelled up, and swelled up all the way down to here. It's been painful. It's been painful for a week. But yeah, those are the things that will do you in every time. Vehicles, transportation. Those of us who are standing outside there now, you just saw the lunatics driving in the rain, you know. No, we don't do that. We drive extra slow, we're extra cautious. Everyone wonders why you're taking your time. You're taking your time because when you're in the middle of nowhere and you get in an accident, there is no emergency room anywhere near you, you know. I was working on a film up in Canada, and it was my fault. I was filming in a creek, and I slipped, and I popped my shoulder out, you know, which is, I don't know if any of you have pulled a shoulder, it's really painful. And my son was with me, and he had to drive me 2 hours to the nearest place to get that popped in again, you know. Even today, he ridicules the sounds I made in the car with every turn, you know, every moan and groan, you know. So, but, you know, I've lost so many good friends. Thank God for drones. That's what I have to say, because helicopters were so dangerous. You know, you think, wow, you know, the helicopter, no. I remember I was filming in Puerto Rico. I was up in the mountains, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere came this fierce thunderstorm. We were in a copter, and we had to, and this was back in the old days when there were just little peasant villages up there in the hills, you know. We had to come down and land in somebody's fruit field, you know. And I'll never forget them coming out of their shacks, you know, as this helicopter coming out of nowhere has just landed right on their field, you know, and it's sort of like, oh my God, what has Jesus brought to us? Oh my God, you know. Yeah, very funny. Anyway, so, you know, we work as a team, obviously. One of the beauties of documentary filmmaking is, you know, the old expression, it was like a family. You know, you always hear that at work, that was a family. And you always hear some overpaid actor or actress saying, Oh, when I worked on that feature, oh yes, it was just like a family. Yes, it was a dysfunctional family. Believe me, I've been there. But in documentary, you'll connect with people and work with them over the years, over and over again, the ones that you really like, and it truly does become a family experience. And I'll tell you one for you potential DPs, one little side story. When I was filming out in the Pacific Islands, the headquarters was Turner Broadcasting in Atlanta, Georgia. And they asked me if I could pick up a crew in Hawaii, because it's cheaper for them to fly them, out to the Marianas Islands and Samoa and those places. I said, okay, I'll look around. So as a fish bug, of course, I went to the aquarium in Honolulu, and then I saw these wonderful clips, So I contacted the filmmaker, who was actually a marine biologist, and I asked to look at some of his stuff, and it was the most beautiful underwater stuff I have ever seen. And so I said, can you kind of put it together on a reel for me that I could show back there, in Atlanta? And I'll never forget it. I showed, I'll leave out the obscenities, but I showed his reel to the executive producer from Brooklyn. Kevin, there's nothing on here but fish, I said, yeah, but look how beautifully he filmed those fish. Imagine what he can do for people. And they let me hire him. And that was his first gig. And then he ended up getting hired by National Geographic as photographer director on the invasive species of Hawaii, And then he did another film for Nat Geo on dolphins, the wild side, in which he hired me now as his writer, okay? So he went from being my surf to me being his surf, And then when I went on staff with National Geographic, I was his supervising producer on his next project. And now the good news is he's moving to Savannah with his wife, and they're going to be living, right down the street from us. But anyway, that's the kind of relationships you make. Make it with composers, with editors in particular. You find editors you're really comfortable with, you love working with them. And I'll go into a little bit on editing at some point. Okay, here's the poll now. You're out in the field, you are the director, right? You're running the show. And you have a sound person, a camera person, and maybe you have an associate producer who's helped coordinate the shoot, with you. If you're lucky, you might have a second camera person. You come across a running river, and it appears very shallow, and on the other side, there's an island. And you think, God, what a fantastic shot if we can get out on that island, and then I can film back this way to those cliffs on the water. So the thing is, crossing this river on foot is not the safest thing in the world. Bad things can happen. I'm sorry, I don't know who this is. Junk, of course. Okay. Do you ask the crew if they want to take the chance and go across before you do it?
Yes.
Yes? How many yes? How many yeses you ask the crew on whether they're willing to do it or not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many no's you don't ask? 1, 2, 3. The nays have it. And the reason is that as the director, you are totally 100% responsible for their safety. You've made the decision. You've told them that's where we're going to go. Your team, no one on the team wants to be the one that says, oh God, it looks too scary for me. I don't think I want to do it, because they think you may never hire them again. They think they may get a little ridicule from the other team members. So you never want to put them in that position. What happens, interestingly enough, and I learned this through experience, is that by making the decision yourself, and it happens with other directors too who I've talked to, you'll fail on the side of safety. Because if it was your own neck, you might say, okay, I don't mind doing it. But when you've got a sound woman schlepping down with all this gear, and now it's going to be walking across a slippery stream, you're sort of thinking, well, I don't know, I really would not like to see her hurt, And so, yeah. And if you remember the bridge accident that happened here, with, of course, is legendary, the woman who died because of the train that ran her over, the director did jail time, and he deserved it. The director put her on those railroad tracks, on a bridge, with no exit when the train came along, you know. And so, yeah, so again, that's it, guys. Safety first, safety first, safety first. Okay, any questions about any of this or any situations you might run into? No? All right, thanks. Okay,